You could be a hero even before you get on a plane to Manchester. Has that crossed your mind? In English, please.
Sorry, I cannot speak in English now.
Why?
Sorry. They will miss me in Portuguese, so I have to speak Portuguese.
They've had about 25 minutes in Portuguese.
I know.
We want 10 seconds in English.
We'll proceed in Portuguese. Next week, you can hear him talking English. Okay.
Yes, more basic English.
It's like a cold shoulder to all your English fans.
That was Gary Cotterill for Sky Sports, out in Portugal ahead of the City Sporting game, demanding that Amorim speak English in his last press conference before a home game as Sporting boss. Arrogant, disrespectful, and self-entitled are three words I would use to describe Gary Cotterill's approach there. And what I want to speak about is, first of all, how well I think Amorim handled that, because he must have been pissed off. And also, previously the British press, I think, kind of got away with what they wanted because there was no way to really scrutinise them. Well, YouTube exists now, so that's exactly what I'm doing here. And Gary Cotterill, yeah, you're in the firing line, and so you should be. Let's have a quick rewind, because it's not exactly the first thing that he's done. This is him here absolutely harassing Erik ten Hag when he was at Selhurst Park, before he actually started the United job.
Welcome to the Premier League, Eric. No. Are you excited to get started? Are you excited to get started?
Doesn't want to speak to you, mate.
You must be wanting to get stuck in straight away.
No, he doesn't want to speak to you.
You're on television.
Don't push me, he's on television.
Doesn't look good. Doesn't look good being manhandled by security, Eric.
Well, how about you step away from him, you harassing piece of just a waste of space. Anyway, this is all fun. This is him trying to speak to Erik ten Hag in the press conference after.
Eric, Bill Rice, BBC. Eric, Sky Sports News. Bill Rice.
Absolutely ignored. Weapon. Good. Let's move on to another example here of Gary Cotterill making an absolute laughingstock of himself out in... Now, let me explain to what this is, right? This is the year before United signed Sancho, and Gary Cotterill was in a bloody car park out in Germany for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks on end, and the German press were laughing at him.
People on the streets raised eyebrows, and actually I've had laughter about the fact that we in England still believe there's any chance at all of Borussia Dortmund selling this player.
Because there was no chance of it at all, but you wouldn't give up. You wouldn't accept no for an answer. And this is what the British press used to do, all right? Okay, this here has kind of annoyed me as well. This idea that Gary Cotterill was just doing his job as a journalist, just to ask questions. What, so demanding that a manager who's speaking his native tongue in his own country speaks in English is asking questions? No, that's absolutely not the way to go about it. And what this is, for me, it reminds me of just the old way that the press, and the press still do, clearly, we've just seen an example of it, or used to operate. And I'm pulling up an example here of David Beckham and the documentary with Netflix. If you've watched it, it's fantastic. There was one bit that reminded me of and it was this, right? That's Eamon and James Clark, two Manchester-based photographers. And you all know what happened with Beckham. He was the most famous person, not just football player, on the planet at one point. Photos through fences, through anything you can get. The paparazzi mentality that exists inside the British press is exactly why Gary Cotterill feels so entitled. Say, why? Why won't you speak English? Why won't you do what I ask you to do? I want you to say this. This is my press conference. Answer my question how I want it to be answered. No, sod that, man. You are at Ruben Amorim's press conference. And if he wants to answer your question, he will answer your question in his own native tongue. And this is why people hate the British media. Now, I'm sure this also exists in other countries, and I've said this before as well. So I'm not saying that ours is 10 times worse than anybody else's, but I can only tell you from my own experiences of it. And on the flip side is this little clip here. Well, actually, no, it's not this little clip here. This little clip here is something that I did previously in my video that I did only, 4 weeks ago on the media. In football, there's one club that attracts more headlines than any other. A club where every stumble's a fall, every positive is undermined, and every player signed is a crime against humanity. Welcome to the never-ending circus that is Manchester United's media coverage. Hated, adored, never ignored, indeed. Now, this is something that Ruben Amorim is going to have to get used to and get used to quickly at United. And this is something if Rude's going to stay or someone else, I help him understand that, you know, at Sporting there would have been criticism and you would have been one of the big three and clubs would have wanted you to fail. But this is Manchester United. Nobody gets coverage like United. Everybody enjoys and revels in the failure of your football club. You are now the manager of it. You will have to deal and cope with that. But on the flip side of how poor that was from Gary Cotterill, and just another example of just a dinosaur approach in terms of journalism, was this. And this was from TNT Sports in an interview that happened one-on-one. And just listen to this little clip in terms of what happens when you can speak to someone in a respectful way and the response you might get.
Sporting director is going to Manchester City. He's a really good friend of yours. Are you friends until you're foes?
Of course, we will be friends until the end, but I have my way, and I choose Manchester United. Manchester.
It's just, there are different ways to approach things, and that's what annoyed me about reading this saying, Gary Cotterill's just doing his job as a journalist. No, he's not. He's doing his job as a journalist in a very particular way, in the same way that these lads, where are they now? That these lads, as paparazzi, would just get a photo. It wouldn't matter whose privacy they were ignoring. As long as they got their photo, that's all that mattered. And that's all that mattered for Gary Cotterill. As long as he got his quote, that's all that mattered. That's not being a journalist. That's doing something. It doesn't matter how many people you piss off. And this is something that Gary Cotterill, the Ruben Amorim's going to have to get used to at Manchester United. It's already happening. They're trying to trip him up. They're trying to put words in his mouth. They're trying to, look, Fergie hated the press, famously banning journalists. And Ten Hag, I actually think, I remember, I can't remember who it was. It was Rob Dawson, Sam Luckhurst, and someone else got banned from press conferences from publishing stuff that they didn't corroborate with the club, didn't ask for an input. Ruben's going to have to deal with that. And I think this one's just pissed me off. Like, before, he's even come in and he handled it admirably, smile on his face, kind of in jest. They're going to try and pick him apart, just like they tried to pick every United manager and player apart, and they will do the same to him. And I just want to make sure that we, as a channel here, we put the scrutiny on it where it deserves to be had, and it absolutely deserves it in this sense. So Gary Cotterill, man, just go and retire. Just go and shout into a wall. Just go and have a pint of bitter in the corner. Because that approach, that paparazzi approach, screw that. Times have changed. And yeah, twat. That's all I've got to say.